Hi guys, I'm Diane and today I'm reviewing The Girls by Emma Cline. I got this book through NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. So The Girls has been going around on BookTube and the internet in general like crazy, so I guess most of you know what this is about, but still. The Girls is quite hard to define, I feel, but I would primarily call it an historical fiction, literary fiction novel. It follows our protagonist Evie, who is 14 years old at the beginning of the novel, and she is your typical adolescent, struggling with her changing body, fighting with friends, and her parents who are divorced, until one day she meets Susan, who intrigues her, a young woman who seems just so interesting that she can't help but hope they meet again, and when they do, it will change her life forever. The novel takes place in the 60s. We aren't really introduced to the world in the story, but soon enough we discover that we are in America, and with all the technology missing, I guess, we discover it's a few years back in time. The characters in the novel are slowly introduced over the course of the novel. Though talked about sufficiently, I still only have a really vague image of her mother, her father, and her mother's boyfriend. It's just the family is talked about as a background, but isn't really touched upon more in depth. Better rounded are the characters that she meets throughout the novel, like people who live on the ranch and her best friend Connie. We do really look through her eyes, so the characters aren't all described as in-depth as they could be because we're looking from her point of view. There are various significant relationships in the novel, like Evie's relationship with her parents and parent figures like her stepmom, her school friends on the ranch, and the complex relationship she has with both Russell and Mitch. I'd say that the descriptions of the relationships are what intrigued me the most, but because the novel is told retrospectively, which means at times it really felt like the older Evie, who's really telling the story, is trying to make us understand how she could like these people and how this ever got so out of hand. The plot of the novel is basically the story of Evie, who comes to meet Suzanne, who brings her to the ranch, where Suzanne and the other girls live with Russell until she becomes a part of that group and later on leaves it. I'd say the first part of the novel focuses more on the characters and the relationships, and the second part of the novel focuses more on the plot, which means there's a bit of a switch, but it didn't really bother me, but it's worth mentioning. The biggest part of the novel is told through the eyes of young Evie, and she comments on the stuff that happens in a tone of, I would later find out that, blah 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 blah. Some chapters do take place in the here and now, where she is staying at a friend's outhouse in the countryside and is visited by that friend's kid and his girlfriend, and I couldn't really figure out the significance of these here and now moments other than a little parallel that is drawn, and they of course just build the framework so we know the narration is done retrospectively. Then there's a little thing which I don't know if I should call a spoiler, but if you really don't want to spoil yourself, then just mute me until this little symbol goes away. So through looking up some reviews and even summaries from the book, I found out this is a loose retelling of the Manson murders. I heard this just before I read the novel, and I didn't really know much about these, so I did some research on it because I wanted to know what it was all about. But really, maybe this should be considered a spoiler, because once you know that it is about the Manson murders, you basically know the overarching plot of the novel. It is a loose retelling though, so it isn't following everything as it happens specifically, I guess. But it was really interesting to read about it, especially because I didn't know anything of those murders before I read the book. I can imagine though that if you're someone who has already read like 5 books about that, it could get a little old, I guess. But yeah. Trigger warnings for violence and the explicit description of unwilling sexual intercourse. I thought The Girls was a very powerful story about how making the wrong friends can influence you negatively, and the decisions that we make in our adolescence could just haunt us our entire lives. I gave The Girls 4 out of 5 stars. I am seeing a lot of different opinions about this book, but if you go into it with an open mind, then I think you'd really enjoy it. I hope you pick it up. I hope you like this review, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.